Imagine a world where more women had the time to fully explore their genius. Welcome to She Rebel Radio, a community-driven podcast dedicated to supporting women to unlearn conventional rules and create businesses of significance. My name is Lulu Minns. I host retreats and create spaces for entrepreneurial women to explore their genius, and today I'm going to create that same space for you, right here on this podcast episode. Welcome to episode 107 of She Rebel Radio, my connected power with Marianne Doherty. Marianne is the London Ecosystem Manager for Natwest, our headline partner for this interim Feminine Power series. Having previously worked as an Entrepreneur Accelerator Manager, Marianne has in both of these roles been central in supporting female entrepreneurs, which is critical following the Rose Review in 2019 and the 250 billion opportunity of untapped potential of women entrepreneurs. You can listen back to episode number 95 to hear more. Together, we're going to review the Feminine Power series and discuss any updates of the Rose Review, especially in light of the UK economy, as just a few months ago, we were hitting the headlines when the pound dropped to an all-time low. Marianne, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. And thank you so much for sponsoring another series of She Rebel Radio.
No problem.
Given the cost of the living crisis here in the UK, do you think now is an even more important time to untap the potential of female entrepreneurs? I know Alison Rose said we cannot afford to accept the status quo, which has become even more true. How are Natwest continuing their support and connection with female entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the cost of living is affecting absolutely everyone. As costs increase, it's just yet another barrier for female entrepreneurs to start and scale their businesses. But I think despite all the challenges, I completely agree with Alison. We simply cannot afford to accept the status quo and allow for female entrepreneurs to remain behind their male counterparts. So I guess, how is NatWest continuing to support and connect with female entrepreneurs? As a bank enterprise, and supporting female entrepreneurs sits at the heart of absolutely everything that we do. Aside from providing our customers with financial support that they may need to grow and scale their businesses, we're really committed to removing the barriers to finding non-financial support as well. And we're the largest supporter of UK business, and we want to champion anyone starting or growing a business. So we do a number of things as a bank, both from a financial perspective and non-financial. And I think the non-financial is really important. We've got an award-winning accelerator programme where we have 14 physical hubs across the UK, and their businesses can access bespoke coaching, community, a network, and also thought leadership. And we recently changed that programme so that women can access that digitally as well as in person. And I think that makes it even more accessible to everyone. Yeah. We've also got things such as our business builder that businesses can access at any time. And that's very much learning modules which you can apply to your business. And of course, we've got local enterprise managers who run in-person workshops and group coaching in your area. And I think that's really great to support and connect female entrepreneurs. As we saw in the pandemic, women are extremely resilient. Entrepreneurs, regardless of sex, they do need to be resilient. So undoubtedly, we'll continue supporting them throughout any crisis that does come up.
Yeah, and I love that you've pointed out there the financial support, but also the non-financial, because it can be quite a good thing to focus on when we're in a cost of living crisis here in the UK. And I know you and I discussed for this series, potentially doing a financial series. And then we were kind of like, do you know what? I think we need a different conversation. Let's focus on feminine power and how we can strengthen ourselves up at a difficult time.
Definitely. I completely agree.
Amazing. And yeah, as we've seen, women really showing their resilience in the pandemic and, the challenges that we face over the last few years. How do you think financial institutions and other bodies can support the extra load that women carry by way of childcare, caring for elderly parents? I know that Pregnant and Then Screwed were recently campaigning at the cost of childcare here in the UK, which is I think an all-time high, higher than our European counterparts, and something that came up in the NatWest Levelling Up event supporting female entrepreneurs back in the summer. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, childcare, caring for elderly parents, it really is a nightmare, especially in this country. And I think this is definitely a concern more so for female business owners as opposed to their male counterparts. Many of the business owners that I work with who are female, they're doing this insane juggling act all the time to look after both their family and their business.
Yeah.
And I know this is still a concern, for women who don't yet have children or maybe aren't caring for elderly parents at this time. So I think it's really down to financial institutions to create supportive policies, but more so culture to allow women to have a career and children or care for elderly parents at the same time. I think some of the things that I know Natwest does really well is flexible working. There's options for women to do condensed hours or job shares, for example, but also hybrid working, I think, is brilliant. And that's something which has really come out of the pandemic. I mean, we were doing it before, but I think it's given that extra layer of flexibility. So 87% of our staff, for example, have a working pattern where they can work between their home and their office, which is brilliant and definitely encouraged. And it just gives women that extra flexibility, or for anyone for that matter, to manage their caring responsibilities whilst doing their jobs really well. And I think this is also as much about giving women flexibility as it is men, because ultimately we can then get the support. And I really think, a happy employee is not only much more fulfilled in their job, but then they're more productive as well.
Yeah.
I think one thing to touch on, maternity leave can really be a nightmare and a huge worry for women when they think about having children. Recently, we transformed our old maternity leave policies and replaced it with something called carers leave. And that was the introduction of a market-leading partner leave scheme. It means that all eligible partners can take up to 52 weeks off, 26 weeks of which will be fully paid. And I think that's brilliant because that allows for both men and women to both take time off. And I think that flexibility can help women massively. It sets the standard of, right from when children are babies, that men should also be caring to for their families, which is great. So I think regardless of whether you're a financial institution or not, I hope to see many more companies follow suit across industries.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it kind of, the gender lens is so important, but there's also the focus of when we need to take that off, and even changing the name to carers leave instead of maternity leave puts that burden in inverted commas and sometimes joy to be able to do that, to care for children. And it's so important that we've brought up elderly parents. I've had my first experience of caring for a parent this year after my father had an operation, and you kind of realize the impact that has, and I was so grateful I was self-employed, because I was the one that was able to really step in and do that. And I think it's important that lots of women become self-employed so they have that flexible working. But so many institutions, and Natwest really leading the way on that as well, to offer that kind of working style for their staff, women and men included.
For sure. I completely agree. I mean, I think with things like the carers leave, it's more so about changing the culture, that this isn't something that should just fall on women, whether that's caring for elderly parents, sick relatives, children. It's very much a shared responsibility.
Yeah, because so often it falls on women when child is sick. Mum takes time off rather than dad. So yeah, it's really changing the culture at a root level there. Now, Natwest and the Telegraph launched the 100 Female Entrepreneurs to Watch list back in the summer and recently published the results. Why was that an important piece of work to inspire and empower women?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was all about celebrating 100 women in business who are really pushing boundaries, redefining success, but most importantly, inspiring others. I think it was such an important piece of work for us because it shines the spotlight not only on amazing women who are pioneering in their fields, but also to use these women as role models, to allow them to be showcased and as case studies for other aspiring female entrepreneurs and for future generations. We received such a large number of applications, over 700 in fact, of really high quality women, and this really encouraged women to shout about their achievements and get comfortable with doing this. I think so often we know that women tend to shy away from self-promotion, and this was really great work. The applicants were from such a diverse range of sectors and regions across the UK, many of who have inspirational personal stories behind their businesses with great ambitions for the future. So I would encourage anyone listening today to certainly go onto our website and look at the results, and I will share a link to that to include in the podcast today.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Marianne. And yeah, it's so important, isn't it, that we connect and see other women who inspire us and doing well for the next generation. You know, I was kind of lucky enough to grow up with my mum running a business with my father. And in fact, she worked for Anita Roddick back in the day. She was the first manager of the Body Shop. Yeah, but not really realizing as well that, you know, lots of young girls and women didn't have access to women in business, you know, when they were growing up. So it's important that we see that and we continue to see that as we run our own businesses.
For sure.
So why, adding on to that really, is it important for us as women to stay connected with each other and to be part of female-focused ecosystems? And how are Natwest continuing to innovate in that space?
Goodness, I mean, I think network is just absolutely everything, isn't it? Having that support system means that women can achieve so much more as a collective than they can individually. And I really do believe that we're so much more powerful in numbers than if we tried to do everything alone and by ourselves. I think being part of a female-focused ecosystem can allow women not only to share challenges, but then they can learn from one another. You know, in my own experience, lots of women share similar challenges, no matter what they do work-wise or depending on what sector they operate in. So it's great to support one another to really learn quicker and also cheaper if you're running a business. Natwest has been really good in focusing on building out ecosystems, particularly for women and minorities. And we'll keep investing in building out our networks, really leveraging these to benefit female businesses. You know, we've got a number of teams specifically dedicated to non-financial support. My whole role at NatWest is to really build out the ecosystem across London and South East that then our female entrepreneurs and any entrepreneur really can benefit from. I think ultimately what I say to my entrepreneurs is it's often not what you know, but it's who you know and who can help you.
Absolutely. And so important for us as women. I feel that traditionally we perhaps haven't had access to those networks. And, you know, it's so important to keep building those out because it really is everything. I know for me, when I left my job in legal, you know, in criminal defence, I really needed to start from scratch and build a network that I could kind of work around and be inspired by and be supported by and create business from and through. It's absolutely essential, isn't it?
I agree. And one thing I always say to female business owners that I work with is this is your ecosystem, it is your network. So, you know, as much as it's there for you to get from and to learn from, also give back. The more that you put in, I think you really get out, essentially.
Absolutely. And yeah, so true. I think even nature shows us that, you know, when we act as a collective in a connected space, that we are more powerful. I think it's geese that they fly faster when they're together than they do on their own, and even wait for each other as well, apparently, if one of them's injured as well.
Oh, I love that.
So reviewing the Feminine Power series, I'd love if you could share what is your magical power and something that you can do better than other people that you know, which again, we've said that sometimes we as women can be, you know, find it difficult to shout about ourselves, but this, you know, episode is a real encouragement for us to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what it is that we feel really embarrassed maybe talking about the things that we're good at, and often spend a lot of time focusing on what we're not so good at. I think for myself, probably my magical power would be to empower others. I'm quite a natural leader. And this power of being able to help others realise their strengths, but also their development areas, allows me to help others reach their full potential. I think this ability to empower others really comes from my childhood. I grew up in a really large family. I've got 4 brothers and 3 sisters. So it was apparent to me from a young age that everyone had different talents and also different weaknesses, if you like. Yeah. And I'm a big believer that childhood is absolutely formative for you as an adult. So because of this, I don't worry as much probably about competition as others do. I tend to work with others, not against them. And I think this has translated really well into my work. lots of female founders that I work with come to me worrying about their competition rather than focusing on themselves. And of course, yes, we want to know as businesses what other competitors are doing and then how we can differentiate ourselves, but that shouldn't be the only worry. So I think my magical power really allows me to develop entrepreneurs and push them out of their comfort zones. And in my role, I get lots of occasions where I can empower others, whether that's in a coaching setting, as you mentioned, or me being out in the ecosystem, finding amazing opportunities for women to showcase their products or their services at large events. And I'm very much a people's person, so I can find out what motivates people and then use that to really empower them.
Yeah, amazing. I guess you had to become a people person growing up in such a large family. You didn't have much choice.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I love that in terms of competition. It is really important to look at what the competition is, but not get stuck there. And I think with social media and things like that, that can be really easy to do, to get stuck in the competition. And thank you for sharing with listeners. It is so important looking at where we've come from and our experiences, because we learn those magical powers, those zone of geniuses at a really young age, because we learn to adapt in our family environment and, use these things to move forward.
Yeah, and I think only when you look back and you really reflect on those challenges that you've overcome, that's when the learnings come from. And it really helps you looking forward then and what you want to achieve next, whatever your goals are.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Definitely. I grew up as the youngest of three sisters, and, I often support many of my clients are, older than I am, but I have a real, I can just sense where people are at and what it is that they need. And I think I learned to do that at a very young age and to understand women in the way that I do, growing up in a very female orientated family. So what is something that brings about your inexorable and unstoppable power? What motivates you?
I think for me, what really brings me unstoppable power is the ability to use my network, but also the backing of a really large corporate like Natwest to do good. I love helping female entrepreneurs access better opportunities. And because my role centres all around managing the ecosystem across London and the South East, I do have the ability to do just so many cool things to help business owners. I think what motivates me, though, is really working with entrepreneurs and seeing them grow and develop from that early idea stage and as an early stage startup to then helping them achieve key milestones in their business, whether that be growing their customer base, helping them secure the first round of investment, or to see, their products in a large retailer when I'm doing my shopping at the weekend, and just knowing that I've been part of that journey. I get such fulfillment knowing that I've helped businesses navigate through their challenges, whether that's, coaching or connecting them to the right people at the right time to help them scale.
Yeah, amazing. And again, that important network keeps coming up.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, network is everything. I would always say that's probably, if I think about our accelerator program and everything that we offer there, I would argue that the network element is the most important, because it's also who do you need to help you and who can you help.
Yeah. And as you've said, it's that we really have to accept we're not good at everything. And when we start a business, you kind of do have to do everything and try your hand at that. But getting support from other people and ideas is absolutely key.
Yes. And I think it's about letting go often, as you say, when you first start your business, you're doing absolutely everything from the numbers to the marketing to the sales and everything in between. But as you do grow, it's about finding out people who you can trust and who can help you on that journey, because ultimately you could be the best person in the world, but you cannot do absolutely everything.
And it takes you longer to do the things that, don't fall in your natural skill set, and time that you could spend elsewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's about, recognizing when things potentially either aren't working or you do need that help. Use your network, use that ecosystem. And I think that's why it's just so important that we do spend time investing in building out our own ecosystems and networks and connecting with females who we can really grow and develop with.
Absolutely. Now, do you think physical strength is important for us as women in business? If so, what does your stronger power allow you to do? And what does that term mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for myself, I wouldn't say that we need physical strength to succeed, but what I do absolutely believe is that we can be more successful if we look after our physical well-being.
Mhm.
Physical strength, I think, looks completely different to everyone, but women in business should absolutely be prioritizing taking care of themselves. And when I talk about taking care of our physical well-being, I absolutely mean, both our bodies as well as our minds.
Mm.
If we really look after our bodies, then we can be the strongest version of ourselves, and that empowers us to make better decisions, especially if we think about business and everything we've spoken about, from juggling caring responsibilities on top of that. And what I've realized is that the female body is really complex. Often female health is under researched, underfunded, and I've seen lots more businesses kind of pop up over the last couple of years, resulting from that problem. I think we can't control a lot of things in life, but we are in control of basic decisions which make huge differences. So if we think about what we're putting in our bodies and how we move our bodies and how we look after our minds and our mental health, and what I know is it might not be strength as such, but absolutely prioritizing health. When I think about that, I can think about the female entrepreneurs who I work with directly who do prioritize their health. And I know from working with them that they do make decisions with more ease, with less stress, and they are able to balance their work and other responsibilities better.
Yeah, it's so true. And I often say to women, and I can't remember, the quote's not mine, but, self-sacrifice is one of a woman's deadly sins. And, I think because women do so much juggling, that if they're in that kind of self-sacrificing their own health and well-being, they're self-sacrificing across the board for so many things. It's not just for that one thing. It's, it's for the kids, it's for the business, it's for so many things. And as you say, that affects our decision-making process as well. If you're making decisions from a place of stress, you're in fight or flight mode, we're less solution focused, it has such a knock-on effect. I know my physical health has really coincided with my business. I often say no one messes with my yoga practice because it actually comes absolutely first before anything else, because that's kind of my baseline really that I can build everything on.
Of course. And I think if we can try to be disciplined, even in the small things like committing to yoga practice, whether that's daily or a couple of times a week, it really helps us to remain grounded when things do get stressful and, we're struggling to control all of the different things that we need to manage. So I think, yes, physical strength, that can be important, but I think health is absolutely the priority.
And within that, running a business, there's stuff I say to clients all the time you could be doing 24/7 and you're thinking about it so often. So having that kind of physical practice, whatever it might be, means you can actually think about something else, even if it's just for half an hour a week. It's a good start.
Of course, yeah. And I think it's taking baby steps, isn't it? If you are listening and you think, God, this isn't something I've prioritized for a very long time, and maybe you're feeling that bit unhealthy, pop out for a 20-minute walk when you can. Do a walking phone call. You don't need to necessarily give up something completely in place of something else. That's something I really encourage my team to do, is if we don't need to be on camera or in person, let's go for a walk together and talk, or jump on the phone and get out and actually get that bit of fresh air that makes such a difference to our well-being and ultimately our productivity as well.
Yeah, and some of our best ideas come from that space as well.
Yes, I agree.
So how do you connect with your wiser power? And do you think our cycles as women can be an advantage if we begin to understand more about them, which ties into this health and lack of understanding about women as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think wiser power is such an interesting one. For me, I think connecting with my wiser power is really surrounding myself with diverse groups of people, and particularly women. In my opinion, I think wisdom comes from experience and time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think with that, if I surround myself with people from different backgrounds and ages and demographics, I can often learn from others. If I even think about sitting with older generations and listening to them and learning from their tales, from successes to challenges and failures. I think ultimately failure is feedback. So I think sitting with different people and listening to them and being connected is a great way to connect to my wiser power. If we think about health, for me, going back to nature, it sounds so basic, but I think getting out for that walk and taking some time to reflect on my own thoughts allows me to learn and allows me to connect to my wiser power. So going back to basics for me, I think is what it's all about.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's that, as you said, connecting with elders, connecting with nature. There's so much wisdom in those things, and stripping it all back is where wisdom lies for sure. Now, finally, what does the term feminine power mean to you, and how can we as women embody more of it?
Yeah, I love feminine power. I think for me, it's all about being independent and strong, but without compromising feminine energy. I think up until recently, for females to be powerful, we had to start acting and thinking with masculine energy and start acting like men a lot of the time. Whereas feminine power, it's still powerful, but it's about being myself and being able to channel feminine energy with that. We've got such superpowers as women. I really believe that, we've got the natural ability to be empathetic and flexible, and we do have the ability to go with the flow naturally, which I think is great. And it's so important in lots of areas of our life, whether we're thinking about work and growing businesses, or if it's with friends, family, or in romantic relationships. I think feminine power provides us with such amazing qualities, and by embodying that and having a solid female network, as we've spoken about, it means that just because you want to do good in business, you don't need to be surrounded by men all the time. I think having that female network is very important, because that provides us with the role models around us who we can relate to. And I think that's great when we think about feminine power, thinking about that as a collective of females. And in saying that, I do think it's also important to have solid men around you as well. I'm really lucky in my own life, both professional and personal, that I've got great male role models. And I think we've all got our roles to play. And I think having that difference in energy can really balance us.
Yeah, really complementary and balance us out. Absolutely. Yeah. And I love what you said there in terms of not compromising that feminine energy and that feminine side of ourselves, which traditionally, again, our female counterparts, found themselves in situations where that was the only option. And we've really seen a change and shift in that, which is incredible and something that we can bring within our businesses as well. So Marianne, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for being with us today. Is there anything else you want to add before we leave?
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And of course, I will share the 100 female entrepreneurs to watch with you.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining our Feminine Power series. Remember, as we enter into 2023, you are more magical, inexorable, stronger and wiser than you think. But before I go, I wanted to share with you a very special Women in Business event on the 22nd of February with our sponsors NatWest. We are collaborating to bring you a very intentional afternoon in London with a specialist guest panel of speakers, a 1-hour self-actualization workshop, and we will enjoy networking after with a glass of something fizzy. I'd love to see you there, so register now using the Eventbrite link in the show notes. You've been listening to She Rebel Radio. It's been an honour to support you taking the time to discover more of your genius. If you'd like to attend a retreat or work with me, please do visit lulumins.com and feel free to further the conversation with me and other incredible women on the usual social media platforms.